Today's episode was in part brought to you by Clark Eli from Clark Eli, the YouTube channel, and here's a response video to his video on formality. So if you are into the kind of subjects that I'm talking about here on this channel, you definitely will find a lot more interesting ideas over at his channel, so go check him out. We did an episode on the concept of le flaneur in the previous episode on my channel, which was 50 minutes long. It was recorded as a podcast episode, which, was something really new for me. I'm still trying to get used to the format because off the camera, I'm a complete bloody idiot. I stumbled all over my words in that episode, so please overlook the filler words. I probably said the L word like 1,000 times in that episode, but please overlook my inadequacies and just enjoy the episode. Back to this episode. I want to talk about my personal opinion, my perspective on this entire thing of formality, on this entire thing of how should an intellectual conduct him or herself. So when you think of an intellectual, when you think of like a really well-read person, the first image that comes to mind is probably like Henry Winter from like The Secret History or something. A very dark and stoic and very sort of like strong character. And as beginner intellectuals and, as more and more young people get into philosophy, getting into the arts, getting into theater studies and literature studies, when people first enter philosophy, especially younger people and, I'm still very much in this process. They tend to go through like an anal phase. And then again, we're not talking about Freud here. This is just like something that I've invented off the cuff. This phase is, kind of like your first year philosophy student having a stick up their ass kind of phase, where when a person first engages with philosophical concepts or like literary concepts, these books, they're gonna give the person a glimpse into the sublime, the kind of like transcendent concepts that like 90% of their friends wouldn't understand. And that breeds a kind of loneliness. And that loneliness is gonna feed back into this kind of like, I'm smarter than the rest of the sheeple out there. So then you have the syndrome of like, this person becomes a loner, this person becomes a hermit, and this person becomes, I don't want to be a part of society. I don't want to be a part of you because that's going to lead me down the wrong track. It's really scary when you first get a glimpse of the inner workings or inner cogs of a machine, which is society and which is culture and which is, everything around us. And of course you're going to be bummed out. So, having this stick up your ass face is actually like a normal process if you're doing your discipline right. If you don't give a shit about literature, well, you won't have this phase. But I'm talking to the people who had experienced this phase or had been through this anal phase, or should I say, stick up the ass phase. When you're in this phase, every one of your convictions, every one of your arguments, they're all very, very fierce, so to speak. You want to argue with people. You want to prove everyone's statements wrong because you feel like you're the one who, had gotten a glimpse into the inner workings of the cogs, and you have the right now to, extricate yourself from the mundane, the ordinary. So your arguments become very fierce, your personality becomes, a little fiercer than usual, and you're turning to kind of a jerk for a little bit. In fact, my favorite uncle, Friedrich Nietzsche, had a quote in this book, Beyond Good and Evil, I think the subchapter of The Free Spirit, passage number 23, in our youthful years we respect and despise without that art of nuance which constitutes the best thing we gain from life. And, as is only fair, we have to pay dearly for having assailed men and things with yes and no in such a fashion. So what Uncle Nietzsche was saying there was that, when you first come in contact with like philosophical concepts or like when you're young, like all your concepts are basically very much like stuck in the wall. You don't see any of the nuances. And in a sense of like a toxic kind of formality, that kind of facade that you put on as an intellectual person, that kind of like very rigid kind of facade that you put on as an intellectual person can actually be perceived as a sign of intellectual immaturity. An intellectually competent person doesn't have to go out there and, debate everybody. Debates are fun, but, it's not gonna involve like the entirety of your being. Competent psyche or competent intellect can simultaneously entertain a slew of ideas. So they can, on one hand, really, really appreciate the insights from the existentialist, and they can really appreciate, some of the concepts from the logical positivists. Whereas, someone that's not as intellectually developed, they tend to get stuck in one of these perspectives and, and argue their points like there's no tomorrow. For example, if they really like Sartre, they will stand by the points of Sartre until the cows come home. I don't know about you, but that's not a very interesting image for me. I'd rather chat with the person that's less brought into their like very rigid kind of intellectual frame. Because frankly, most of these people, they don't actually get emotional when when you jump between perspectives. Whereas these very serious folks, they're gonna tear you to shreds if you rub them the wrong way with your ideas. So Clark, I think this video had completely deviated from this idea of formality, but I think formality is necessary sometimes, but it's not necessary for an intellectual person to present him or herself in a very formal manner. And if you overdo the formality part, you tend to run into these like really rigid thinking systems that, you know, get you trapped into one paradigm. But if you take a more free-spirited approach to this entire journey of self-discovery and intellectual development, you actually stand a much better chance of being a decent human being, but at the same time, be a very sort of like intellectually flexible person. And I would even argue that it is like the more relaxed philosophers, the philosophers that are actually a little nonchalant, a little weird, and a little quirky in their personal lives, those are the people that are actually going to produce some of the most amazing works. Serious Image of Henry Winter. That's a myth. Intellectual people don't have to be overtly formal, and they don't have to have sticks up their asses. If someone's overtly serious about their views, then that's a symptom of intellectual immaturity, because a mature intellect isn't afraid to jump between different perspectives. That's all I have for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching this episode. If you're interested in more content from me, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. The link is in the description box down below if you want more goodies from me, and also check out Clark's channel for more content. Anyway, Waldun here, and I shall be signing off right about now.